Good day, everybody. Here we are on the Bible in a Year 2021, day 139. It's 139, and we're looking at 2 Samuel, chapters 19 to 21. So, if you remember, going back, Job has killed the king's son, and the king has gone into this big depression, and he's all upset, even though it was his son who stole the kingdom away and was out to kill his father. Parents, yeah. So we see in verses 3 to 4, because of the king's despondency over his son, that he ends up dishonoring the troops. So that day, the troops crept back into the city, like soldiers creep back ashamed after they fled from battle. The king covered his face and cried out in a loud voice, "Oh, my son, Absalom! Oh, Absalom, my son, my son!" So you can imagine these guys who laid down their life for the king, went into exile with the king, was willing to die in defending him, and now here's the king in mourning over the very person that they were trying to protect him from. Yeah, they crept back in. And then we see something here. Job. I don't want to say too much about Job because there's a lot more to be said about Job coming up. But here we see that Job really deals with David. And it's, I have here for David's sake, but it's more than David's sake, because as much as Job is there for the king, he's also there for the kingdom. And he knows that what affects the king and how the king behaves really has an impact on the kingdom. And so we see here, he comes into the king, "Now get up, go out and encourage your followers. I swear to the Lord that if you don't go out there, not one man will stick with you tonight. And that will be more trouble for you than all the trouble that you faced from your youth until now." There are periods of our life when we can afford, I don't know if that's the right word you want to use, but we can kind of disappear from life. We can withdraw and go through the grieving process and such. But there are times that we've been called to positions and responsibilities that we can't negate those. We can't we can't for ourselves set aside those responsibilities, especially when it's people who are looking for our leadership, like children. You're going through a hard time because of something that's gone in the family. Let's say you lost somebody in the family and it's really affecting you. But you can't allow what you're going through personally to remove you from your children, because that's your responsibility right there, is for the children. And that's what it's like in this case, is that, yeah, David has lost another son, and even though this son was in rebellion, David did not want him killed. And Job killed him because Job knew what was best for the kingdom and ignored what the king had to say. So that's why I question whether Job is dealing with this because of Job. I mean, Job is dealing with this because he's loyal to the king, or is it because he's loyal to the kingdom? Here in chapter 19, verses 9 to 10, we see that there's this turmoil now in Israel, because people are split. Everyone was arguing throughout Israel's tribes, saying, "The king delivered us from our enemy's power, and he rescued us from the Philistines' power. But now he has fled from the land and from controlling his own kingdom. And Absalom, the one who we anointed over us, is dead in battle. So why do you say nothing about bringing the king back?" They're in this tough place because David did not try to defend his position. He did not try to defend Jerusalem. He did not stand up to Absalom. He retreated. And so the people are looking at that and just like questioning, how can he be our king? How can he rule over us when he wasn't even willing to defend? And so the whole place is in turmoil because there's those who want to bring him back and those who don't want to bring him back. And we see here that David, as much as he is a warrior, as much as he is a worshiper, a songwriter, a musician, and all the things he is, he's also an acute politician. And we see that in verses 11 to 12. When the things that all the Israelites were saying reached the king, David sent a message to the priests, Zadok and Abiathar. Say the following to the elders of Judah. Now, notice that, of Judah. Why should you be the last to bring the king back to his place? You are my relatives. You are my flesh and bones. Why should you be the last to bring the king back? So David's playing on the alliances here within the tribe. He's playing on the feelings between the tribes, the pride that there is. And Judah has pride that king, that one of theirs, David, is king. You know, they take great pride in that. And so David's playing to that. He's a keen politician here. And then we see, there's the whole, the king is still the king. I better make right here. So that's what we find happening here. Shimei, he's the one who insulted the king, and his troops wanted to kill him, but David said, no, don't do it, because it's the Lord who is doing this. And now he comes in and he's groveling before the king. He said to the king, may my master not hold me guilty or remember your servant's wrongdoing that day my master the king left Jerusalem. Please forget about it. Just forget about it. Your Majesty, because your servant knows that I have sinned. But look, I am the first person from the entire family of Joseph to come down today and meet my master, the king. So he's trying to make up for it. And then we have this dispute. Remember, I pointed out before Mephibosheth's, the servant had told David that Mephibosheth was just looking for his kingdom, for his grandfather's kingdom to be given to him. And Mephibosheth, that just didn't fit his character whatsoever. And then we find out his side of it, and we see here his position of mourning, and in his actions really are louder than words. And we see here Mephibosheth, Saul's grandson, also came down to meet the king. He hadn't taken care of his feet, trimmed his beard, or washed his clothes from the day the king left until the day he returned safely. And then we see here in verse 43 that David might have been a keen politician, but it's going to work against him, because now he's really drawn up these differences. He's pulled out this pride of Judah now. So everybody sees themselves as being different than Judah, and they begin to resent that the king is from Judah. So we see here, but the Israelites answered the people of Judah, we have 10 shares in the monarchy, not in David, but in the monarchy. What's more, we are the oldest offspring, not you. So why have you disrespected us? Weren't we the first to talk about bringing back our king? But the words of the people of Judah were even harsher than the words of the Israelites. So yeah, David seeded this. And don't forget that Judah has acted as the firstborn for a very long time now. And this is gonna play out, as we know, later on down the road. In 2 Samuel 20, verse 9 to 10, we see the problem with Joab here. Joab is fiercely proud of Israel, as we've been seeing. The things that he protects the king because he knows David is the best king. It's the best one for that position. And he does what he does to support the king, to encourage the king, to defend the king for the sake of the kingdom. And he believes that he's the only one who can play that role. So regardless of how David feels about anything else, Joab is going to protect his position. And so David had promised the position of heading up the army to Amasa. And that's not good because Joab is powerful. And Abishai, his brother, is the commander of these elite forces. So I don't know about Massa. I don't know if Massa thought the king could actually protect him, but the king can't protect anybody from Joab. We've already seen that. And so we read here, "How are you, my brother?" Joab asked Amasa. And with his right hand, he took hold of Amasa's beard as if to kiss him. But Amasa didn't notice a sword in Joab's hand. Joab struck him in the stomach with it so that Amasa's intestines spilled out on the ground. He died without Joab striking him a second time. Then Joab and his brother Abishai pursued Sheba, Bishri's son. Now, Sheba is the one who's leading the rebellion right now. He's leading the other 10 tribes away from the king. So that's what's going on here. So like Amasa's on the same side as Joab, but Joab really feels that he's the only one who can fulfill this role. Yeah, is Joab justified because of his loyalty? Does he get to supersede the king's rule? So we see in verse 20-21, Joab answered, "I would never, ever annihilate or destroy such a thing." So there's the question. The enemy has gone into the city. It's an ancient city. It's one of the first cities, and the wise woman of the city is questioning Joab why he's there to destroy the city. So he's there and he's saying, like, I'm not here to destroy anything. That's not the issue. A man named Sheba, Bishri's son, who is from the Ephraim highlands, has rebelled against King David. Just hand him over, and I'll leave the city alone. The woman said to Joab, "His head will be thrown over the wall to you." Because she knows what's best. She's a wise woman. And then we have this incident that happens here in 2 Samuel chapter 21, verses 1-2. And we see again the importance of keeping your vows. Here it says, there was a famine for 3 years in a row during David's rule. David asked the Lord about this, and the Lord said, "It is caused by Saul and his household, who are guilty of bloodshed because he killed the people of Gibeon." So the king called for the Gibeonites and spoke to them. Now the Gibeonites weren't Israelites, but were survivors of the Amorites. The Israelites had sworn a solemn pledge to spare them, but Saul tried to eliminate them in his enthusiasm for the people of Israel and Judah. So the Gibeonites should have been eliminated, but they weren't. And Israel ended up making a solemn pledge to them. And that solemn pledge, fulfilling that solemn pledge, was more important to the Lord than Israel actually carrying out the Lord's will of everybody being wiped out. And we talked about that, the importance, how important keeping your word is. So they're facing this large famine because of the actions of Saul when Saul was king. And so the Gibeonites were asked what they wanted to do, and they wanted, I believe it's seven of the descendants from King Saul to be killed because of this genocide that he had been trying to fulfill. And we see here that as David is trying to fix this problem about the solemn pledge, he also has a problem that he needs to keep his solemn pledge to Saul. When Saul wasn't understanding the importance of that solemn pledge. And so we see here that he spared Mephibosheth. But the king spared Mephibosheth, Jonathan's son and Saul's grandson, because of the Lord's solemn pledge that was between them, between David and Saul's son, Jonathan. So, he did what he had to do. And we see here that David is always moved by a righteous act. He's always moved by somebody doing the right thing. And in verse 11 to 12, when David was told what Ahijah's daughter, Rizpah, Saul's secondary wife, had done, he went and he retrieved. And it goes on about how he made sure everybody had a proper burial, and he took care of all of that, and he honored that family. And he was provoked because of Rizpah. Because of her, he in turn was provoked in righteousness. And that's what righteousness does. It provokes people into doing the right thing. And we see here, again, Job just keeps coming up and keeps coming up and coming up, and Abishai. But you remember that they are David's nephews, right? But Zeruiah's son Abishai came to David's aid, striking the Philistines. So this is when David had gone out into battle as an old man, and he was about to be killed. And in comes Abishai to help David, striking the Philistine down and killing him. Then David's men swore a solemn pledge to him: "You will never march out to battle with us again. You must not snuff out Israel's lamp." So David was key because of all these battles and winning peace. He was absolutely key. He was so well respected and admired. But a lot of that had to do because of the support of Joab and Abishai, because of what they provoked David into. So they were very important during the whole forming, even though Joab often did the wrong thing to do a right thing, and there's a cost to that, and he will pay for that. He will. But it doesn't take away from his contribution to this whole period with David. So that's some things for you to think about. And I'm going to leave it there. Just thank you guys for being with me and on this wonderful journey through the Bible. I pray that you have an excellent day, and I'm looking forward to seeing you tomorrow. God bless.